Hey, what's up you guys? John here. I'm just gonna hang out, have a cup of coffee with you guys and teach you 31 must-know real estate keywords. I'm gonna teach them fast, simple. I'm gonna explain them well, but I'm gonna teach it fast. I want this to be one video that ultimately changes the way that you look at real estate and see real estate. It's not gonna be one of those 2-hour videos where at the end of it you feel like you learn nothing. I'm gonna try to do this in like 10 or 12 minutes. And at the end of it, you'll be able to have a really good conversation with a real estate agent or an investor, a business partner, with someone. Because if you don't know any of these words and they know that you don't know them, they're gonna take advantage of you. It's kind of like when you have a car issue and you take it to the mechanic and you don't know anything about cars, then they always try to up the bill on you. They always try to screw around with you. But if you know these words, you'll be much better off. So let's start from the top. A broker. What is a broker? So in California, you must be a real estate agent, a licensed real estate agent for 2 years. And then once you're licensed for 2 years, then you can then take the test to become a broker. The difference between being a broker and a realtor is that a broker can have agents work underneath of them. They're a business owner. They act more as a business owner than as an employee. So they have that option to grow and scale and build out a company. Next is a buyer's agent. That is a real estate agent that works in behalf of a buyer. Then a realtor is a licensed salesperson to act as a fiduciary to a buyer or seller. So what that means is that if they work for the buyer, they have a duty to represent the buyer's best interest. And if they have a seller and they sell that seller's property, they have a fiduciary duty to act in behalf of the seller to get them the best price. Commission is the fee that the real estate agent is paid for the service that they perform for either the buyer or the seller. Wholesaling. Now this is what wholesaling is. Wholesaling is kind of like being a real estate agent except without the license. Most wholesalers do not want to have a real estate license for the simple reason that they don't want to act as a fiduciary, because their job is to find a home seller and tell that seller that their property is worth less than it actually is. And let me give you an example. Let's say that Michelle's house is actually worth 300, but Tom says, no, it's worth 200. And Michelle says, okay, I'm gonna sign the contract with you to sell it at 200,000. Well, he takes that contract and then finds a buyer to pay 250,000. And then he assigns the contract. So he basically says, okay, now you have permission to buy it. And that $50,000 fee then goes to the wholesaler. But if he had a real estate license and did that, that would be illegal and he would be sued. So that is what a wholesaler is. Fix and flip is when you buy a property that is distressed, needs work, and you fix it up and then you flip it to a new owner, and generally you'll assume a profit if you do it right. House hack is when you buy a property, can be a multifamily property, and you occupy one of those units, and then the rents from the other structures, the other apartments, exceeds the cost of the mortgage. So you basically live for free. That's house hacking. Backup offer is when the seller has already accepted an offer on the property. However, you continue to make an offer and they accept your offer. Now you're in backup position. They can have multiple backups. You could be backup position number 1 or backup position number 5. It depends on how many offers are on that property. Escrow is the process that you go from start to finish on a real estate purchase. Some states have escrow and some states do not. However, the process is relatively the same. Cap rate is the net operating income divided by the purchase price. Let me give you an example. Let's say that the property is producing $100,000 in net income per year, and the property sells for $1 million. It will be a 10% cap rate. So it's simply the net operating income divided by the purchase price. And then net income is the profit, the net profit that the property generates. You never factor in for a mortgage with net operating income, ever. Gross scheduled income is the gross income that's generated from that property. Under contract simply means that the property, they've accepted an offer and it's under contract. Credit is, let's say you're under contract to buy this property and you come up with a leak or mold or a roof issue, and that issue might be $20,000. Then you tell the seller while you're under contract, hey, there's a $20,000 issue here. I don't have the money to fix this. I want $20,000. And the seller will say, well, I'll give you $10,000. You negotiate and you solidify a credit. And they can either credit that to the actual price that you're paying for your property. So if you're paying $100,000 and they agree to pay $10,000 credit, then they can reduce the price to $90,000, or they can credit that $10,000 towards your closing cost, which you're actually bringing to the table for your down payment to close the deal. Disclosure is if they have a problematic tenant or a roof leak or anything in between that has to do with the property, they have to disclose this to you legally, because if they do not and it comes back in a year or so, then you can pursue them for not disclosing that property. Another interesting thing to know is in California, if something happens, if someone dies or depending on the cause of death, they may have to disclose that to you. But if anything happens to that property and there's a disclosure and you do not move forward on that transaction, let's say you do an inspection and a bunch of things come out and now the seller's aware of it, they have to disclose that to the new buyer. If they don't, they again can be in big trouble. Earnest money deposit. In California, the normal earnest money deposit is 3% of the purchase price, meaning if a property is $1 million, you have to put $30,000 into escrow within 3 days of opening contract. This is negotiable. You can have a $1 earnest money deposit or 10%, whatever it is, but generally it's 3% is what sellers like to see in escrow. This is fully refundable if you do not move forward on that property and you do not remove all of your contingencies. Escrow, again, is the process from start to finish while you're doing a real estate purchase. Equity is the difference between what the property is worth versus how much you owe on the property. Let me give you an example. Let's say that the property is worth $100,000 and you owe the bank $80,000. So there's a 20% difference. That 20% difference is equity. Very simple. And generally, when you want to borrow against the property, banks want to see at least 70% equity in that property to want to lend to you. So if you have, say, that same example, $100,000 property, you owe $60,000, they might lend you $10,000 or maybe $20,000. It depends. But that's generally, they want to see the equity in that property. Otherwise, they don't want to take on the risk of lending on that property and having too much debt on that property. So if you don't pay, they want to know that you're going to be in a position to either sell that property to pay them back, or they might have to foreclose on you. They want to make sure they're not going to take a loss, and they don't want too much debt on the property. Counter offer is when you offer X price and they either counter you, the seller decides to counter back at you. Let me give you an example. If you're attempting to buy a property and they want you to put more money down, or they want you to pay more, or they want a different terms in the contract, they're going to counter you. And then they're going to say that this is what they want. And you do the back and forth game. This happens in every single deal for the most part, is you'll make an offer and then they'll negotiate. That's a counter offer. Inspection is when you do your due diligence on the property. So you could be inspecting the roof, a physical inspection, a sewer inspection. I recommend getting all of the inspections for the most part. You can start with a physical inspection, which is the main, and then if that inspector uncovers many other issues, you can then do other specific inspections around those issues. Commercial real estate is 5 units and above, meaning there could be 5 apartments on one lot. That is commercial real estate. Landlord is the person that owns property and rents that property. MLS is the multiple listing service. This is where all real estate agents act and complete their listing. So they'll put a listing on the market, put it on the MLS, then Zillow and Trulia and Redfin and all these other websites will take the information from the MLS and distribute it throughout the internet. And that is what the MLS is. Pending status is different than looking for backup. Looking for backup means that they're looking for a backup offer in case the first offer doesn't work out. Pending status means that the buyer, moving forward, removed all contingencies. So they removed the inspection contingency and the appraisal contingency and the loan contingency, and they're moving forward to closing. And there's no other contingencies that the buyer has to lift. SFR is single family residence. Short sale is simple. Short sale is, let's say you buy a property at the height of the market for $500,000 and you put $100,000 down, you owe the bank $400,000. Now let's say that the next year that property is worth $300,000 and you owe the bank $390,000. Now you have that $90,000 above what the actual value of the property is. However, now you have all these other costs. You have a real estate agent to pay for, which can be 5 or 6%. You have escrow and transfer taxes. You have all these other fees. So you technically can't sell that property, even if you wanted to, because you owe the bank more than it's actually worth. So what you would generally do is you would list the property for sale for what it's actually worth, maybe $300 or $295, and then you'd bring those offers to the bank and see if you can negotiate with the bank to try to complete that sale, because you no longer either can afford the property or want to handle that property. This generally is not going to be good for your credit. Speak to an attorney if you have to do this. Survey is where an surveyor comes up to the property and marks off where the property lines are and tells you where your property is. Staging is when you rent furniture. There's a staging company that will come out to the property and actually supply furniture that looks almost custom to your house to highlight the beauty of your property. So then you can hopefully attract a higher price or higher bid for your property. Staging is not cheap. It can be expensive depending on the area and the size of your house and the variety of factors. But that is what staging is. Tenant is someone that rents property from the landlord. It's a renter. Double closing is when you have a house and let's say you want to close the sale of your house on August 1st. However, you're now under contract to buy another property. You close them simultaneously. You're closing them together. You're closing together the same day. Double closing. And then contingency is when you buy a piece of property and when you start out the buying process and you go under contract, you have a variety of steps that you have to complete before you purchase. So if you buy it in the beginning and then you uncover something that you do not like and you want to back out, you can go ahead and back out safely. However, once you remove all of your contingencies, if you back out, you can then jeopardize your earnest money deposit, the EMD, which could be the 3% of your purchase price. So you want to run through all of your contingencies to make sure that the property is exactly what you wanted to buy. So these are the main terms that you want to know when starting out in real estate. If you have any additional information or questions, just drop them below. I'll always answer them. I also have a free real estate investing mini course down below in the playlist. Please smash that like button, drop your comments, and subscribe if you're a new subscriber. Let me know and I'll personally welcome you to the channel. All right, guys, until next time.